Well, now I'm going to move on to the book on youth collaboration. So, Sasha, you're going to be my focus now, but I would invite you, Dr. Brian, to come in and balance our conversation around this whole area. So, Sasha, you're the first author of Super STEAM Team, a hero-directed tour through the principles of productivity. And congratulations on what looks like a wonderful, colourful, enjoyable book that any child would be so excited to get their hands on, and especially if the educator, the leader, is honed in and trained on how to manage this whole theme as well. So the book introduces the notion of frenzy fog as a metaphor for task confusion. How does reframing overwhelm as a shared challenge rather than individual failure transform how children approach the whole situation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So children or adults who are stuck in a frenzy fog, which is based on the idea of frenzied doing from the steam and water framework, the H2O framework, they're hyper-focused without real direction. So when I went to visit the classroom last week, I asked the kids, like, how many of you guys have a pet, like a cat or a dog? And I asked them if they've ever used that laser tool on them, the red little laser where you go like this and the cat runs all around the room. And that was kind of how I explained to them frenzied doing. It's directionless, it tires you out, it might frustrate you because you can never really grab the red laser, it's always out of reach. And it makes it more difficult to be solution oriented overall. So it can make the task at hand seem like 20 times its actual size, and it can feel very isolating, especially for children. And your question makes me think about one of the benefits of attending therapy, which is psychoeducation, where a client can enter a session feeling like they're the only person that in the world that experiences this. And part of the job of the therapist is to educate the client about how common the problem actually can be and how solvable it is based on evidence-based practice. So in other words, instead of it being on the client to figure out their own treatment or supply their own solution, there are research-based solutions to help them, which is exactly what's in this book. So in a similar way, the frenzy fog is common, which children might not know right now. And actually the illustration of Oliver, where he has swirly eyes and all these distractions and his time is filled with all these things that aren't helping him, it actually was designed intentionally for students to open that and say, oh my gosh, I've been there because
That's me.
yeah, it's happened. And so this has the same function of the example I provided about therapy. You know, the problem exists and it's probably solvable. And so there's a heavily research-based concept in psychology, which kind of is exactly what you did in your question, which is called cognitive reappraisal. And this might involve reframing a negative thought. So changing the thought from I'm the only one who experiences this overwhelm when I get assigned a task to most people experience this and there are steps I can take to help myself. So when we talk about agency, the A in car, or autonomy, the A in car, or agency or ownership over yourself and your goals, this puts the power in the hands of the children. And what a wonderful skill to learn so early on in life.
Absolutely. It's foundational. Absolutely. Very good. So
yeah, holding up an image of power that comes after the frenzy fog once you start getting into STEAM. Sasha's so good at putting these concepts into visual art.
It is powerful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your STEAM sidekicks model pairs high school mentors with younger students. And how does this peer-to-peer dynamic unlock different kinds of learning than traditional adult-child instruction?
Great question. So yeah, the great thing about this book is, it's a narrative. So the first thing is, Oliver is going through the frenzy fog and the superheroes help him. But when you flip it over, it's a workbook based on water, which is group based, which is the whole concept we've been talking about, which is how do I help you reach your goal? And so in this idea of helping each other through the workbook elements, there's plenty of research that says that teaching a concept is an excellent way to learn it yourself. And so in that way, the high school students are gradually becoming experts in STEAM, which helps themselves, but also helps the younger people. And as I was saying, it's so applicable to everyone. So this works out. And so even though even creating the book, I learned a great deal about these concepts. And sometimes I even feel like, Motivation Man is sitting on my shoulder interviewing me about what I really want in life. Like these characters come to life in ways that are vibrant, and it's the antidote to the isolation, is to feel like there's a team around you. I also think that it's helpful to have these concepts demonstrated by someone who is a bit older than you, but not too much older, because it helps them understand that they can start developing their expertise now as children, and they can evolve into the STEAM sidekicks themselves and become role models and long-term mentors. And the model itself represents STEAM. Social Butterfly is the character who's based on S in STEAM, social support. And she's probably very happy at the idea of a mentor-mentee model that's based on STEAM. Yeah, and Dr. Higley is showing one of the illustrations, which is kind of Oliver has now climbed the staircase of each of these steps and feels so accomplished. And the great thing is the STEAM team's heroes don't leave after that. They're still cheering you on from their individual steps.
Beautiful model, beautiful concept. And the superhero characters each represent distinct strengths. How does this model of distributed excellence challenge traditional notions of individual achievement?
Yeah, so the superhero theme really speaks to me because it represents a very simple but a very important message, which is we all have valuable assets to offer the world. If we mapped out the people who have gotten us to our current point, the list would likely be very long. It would include teachers who gave you educational tools, or neighbors who taught you how to have friendly conversations, or parents who drove you to school in the morning. And so whether or not we actually consciously realize it, we have small armies of people around us who want us to achieve our missions. And so for that reason, I think that missions are never really individual endeavors, truly. And helping children realize this can influence their motivation to actually seek out the social support. And I have a firsthand example of this. I can personally say that my small army got bigger when I met Dr. Higley and Dr. Haysacker, who gave me, they helped me increase my own self-efficacy. They gave me this very exciting endeavor that like lit up my heart, as I was saying. And so there are people who want to help us, and we can use that to help ourselves.
Yeah, so I suppose it lends itself to the idea of role models as well, teachers as role models, adults as role models, and the mirror neurons and all of that, and how we copy what we see and all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you describe the book as fostering intergenerational, community-wide connection. And that whole intergenerational thing really appeals to me. And what we're losing of it maybe in today's world of working from home, etc. as well. That's another day's work. But what patterns of interaction between adults and children need to shift for this vision to succeed?
So my short answer to that is that we as adults need to realize that children are brilliant. And I think many children would benefit from being put in the driver's seat of their own missions, their own mission activation. Sure. In the same way that we talked before about how college students are able to choose what they want to study after they've gotten the foundational basics of education, which is very important. The foundations are very important. But I think that there are ways to help children choose what they like to do within that foundation. Children have creativity and resilience, and they desire collaboration more than we realize that they do. They desire coaching. They want that buy-in. They want the respect, like we were talking before, of I respect your mission. I think it's important what you think is important. So a child who's allowed to choose some of the ways that they develop early on might become the adult who feels high self-efficacy, and they feel that they deserve a job that they enjoy and hobbies that fulfill them and a life design that lights up their heart. One of the workshop materials that I had given the children was actually, the game of life, or Candyland, that setup of so I had printed out a blank board game like that, and Motivation Man was sitting right next to it. And I said, when you zoom out on your life, what do you feel that you want to see out of it? And then after the entire workshop, we went back to Motivation Man and we zoomed all the way into the thought bubbles that they wanted. Yeah, exactly. It was based off of that, Dr. Higley. Thank you. And then they zoomed all the way into thought bubbles, which Motivation Man also talks about, which, are things like, I can get an A, I can be outstanding in my class. And these are the intrinsic motivators. So basically, steam and water are lifelong tools that can cyclically empower the people who use them. So a parent, like I said before, giving the child the ability to choose where they put their effort into sends the following message. It says, I support you and I trust you because you're capable.
Excellent. I nearly get the feel of a potential for a game, a board game of some kind there from one of the yes, what you've held up there. But
this is called, by the way, Teresa, the water game.
Excellent.
Where the mentor and the child work together to try to play the water game together. In other words, play the game of life in a super high level.
Oh, there is some ideas there to shoot off from. But, the children nowadays, unlike children of past years, are all digital natives. So I'm just going to have a look at these questions again now through the lens of AI. Because our children, whether we like it or not, are immersed in the digital world. And we are, I suppose, every responsible adult is trying to guide children in how to be responsible in their use of technology. So the frenzy fog concept addresses human overwhelm. Now, with AI promising to solve efficiency problems, how do you teach children to balance technological assistance with developing their own problem-solving capabilities? And that's a big one, really, as we advance at such a high speed into AI.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very important question, especially right now. I would say proceed with caution would be like my 3-word answer, and I'll explain that. But basically, we want to make sure that we're not enabling children to shut off certain parts of their brain, because creativity is a muscle. And when it's exercised, it gets bigger and bigger. And that's where something incredible comes from. That's where something is able to be born from your heart. So I think we need to be careful with AI and teach children to use it as a means of opening up their minds instead of closing them. For instance, children might be inclined, or parents might even be inclined, to teach their children, go to ChatGPT and say, give me 10 essay topics that I can use. That's a bit limiting because that's not coming from what the child wants. ChatGPT doesn't know the child. ChatGPT knows algorithms and numbers and code. And so I think that it could be used in some way. It could be used to maybe think of like broad topic ranges to spark discussion with the parent. But as long as there's social support from the parent and the parent is ensuring that the child is still exercising their creative muscles, I think it could be valuable.
And, if you look at the parent as the first educator and you look at the educators, educating the educators is so important these days in terms of AI. And the idea of use it or lose it is very, very pertinent here. If children don't use their own organic creativity, what's going to happen?
I wanted to show this again to you, Teresa, because as Sasha was talking, I was thinking again of the water game. And a couple of the elements of the water game came to mind as Sasha was talking. The first one was overcoming barriers. You score higher if you can use all kinds of things to help you overcome barriers. So if AI gives you ideas on how to overcome barriers and you can use that AI to overcome your barriers, then you score higher on the water game scorecard. If, on the other hand, you just become dependent on AI, it's less likely because, you've got to be able to, as Sasha said, you've got to know your own heart. So AI can give you suggestions, but if it doesn't really align with your heart, then you've got to keep thinking and maybe using other technologies or talking with other people. So if technology helps you become better at overcoming barriers, then it helps you with the water game. If it closes you down on that, then you score more lower. The other element I was thinking of is team building. If AI helps you to create the kinds of teams Sasha was talking about, more and more people into your life that help you to do the things that you want to do in life, then AI is helping you play the water game at a higher level. If, though, you start to become so dependent on technology that you don't continue to build human teams around what it is that you're doing, then AI is actually harming your water game score. So I think the book helps people to think about all kinds of different influences on themselves and their mentors and mentees and children, including AI. Is AI helping us as a family, as a classroom, as an organization to play the water game or the game of life at a higher level? Then great, we're using AI in an H2O centered way. If it's harming our scores on the water game or the game of life, then we're using AI in a dry way.
So speak to me for a moment on the notion of AI as a team member, as a member of the human team. That is a big shift for any workplace now, and it will become a shift in the classroom of today.
Yeah, so I think about any technology, again, in terms of the H2O, the dry path. So there was a time when we didn't have the printing press, and then we did, and then we had books. So now we have classrooms with books. We had all other kinds of things, computers, things that we used to not have, and then we did have, and now we have AI. And sort of related to what I just said, if like books, computers, PowerPoints, Microsoft Word, whatever, if all of those things are boosting individuals' esteem for the things that matter most to them, they're being used in an H2O centered way. If they are not boosting individual esteem or groups' water levels, then they're being used in a dry way.
So your model emphasizes distributed human strengths through superhero characters in an era where AI excels at individual tasks. How do we help children value and develop their uniquely human collaborative abilities?
I love your use of the words uniquely human here. I think that's like the core part of the question and the answer. And something that's uniquely human is the fact that we can choose the roles that we want to be in. So there's a part of the book where it shows a bunch of children in their roles, like brother, sister, daughter, baseball player, student. And then it gives children to actually the opportunity to create their own roles, and then based on those roles, create their own objectives and missions. And so I think we help children stay uniquely human along with AI as a tool by helping them emphasize these roles. So because AI can be excellent at like presenting information, but it can't replace like my little brother's role as a team captain or my younger role as a big sister. And this is mainly because goals and roles reside in your heart. And so that is a uniquely human concept. So it's all about emphasizing their authority, and just like Dr. Higley said, like use it as a tool to help you maybe brainstorm, but keep it human. And we can do that in the way that Social Butterfly would support, which is sit down with your mom, sit down with your brother, sit down with a friend, and talk about what AI might have given you as output.
So it's all about the human handshake, the human connection, isn't it?
Yeah. And when I think of that, I think of the two other acronyms we talked a lot about today, the GREs, genuineness, regard, and empathy, and CAR, competence, autonomy, relatedness. If AI is serving us in those two different acronyms, then it's an H2O centered experience. If it's detracting from either one of those acronyms, then it's a dry experience.
And turning to you, Brian, now with the final questions in this area. As AI reshapes intergenerational workplace dynamics, how does your approach to family-wide collaboration prepare children for a future where human connection may be at a premium?
Yeah, I think it circles back really to some of the main themes of our entire show today, and back to those acronyms again. This kind of brings us back to the beginning, really, of the show, I think.
Yes.
That because AI is a tool, but it doesn't have all of the human experiences that we have, at least not right now. I know some AI experts might say eventually we can get them there, and then that's a whole different discussion, I think. But right now, the essence of empathic, genuine, and regardful connection is the ability to have at least a notion of what it's like to be a human being across the entire lifespan. So, so often it's important to have your own experience with. We talked a little bit about the importance of shifting culturally from motivations related to guilt and shame and fear and into excitement and enjoyment. One of the things that's so important about the human connection is that we as humans have had those experiences. We know how bad it feels to be motivated mostly by guilt and shame and fear. And we know how good it feels to be motivated by interest and excitement and connection. And through those common human experiences, we're able to create those GRE-centered, H2O-centered relationships and be helpful to ourselves and others. So again, as long as we use AI as something that facilitates our genuineness, regard, and empathy, and competence, autonomy, and relatedness, it's an H2O-centered tool. Once we move away from that, then we're talking about using a tool that is more dry than H2O-centered.
Very good, very good. I think that is a wonderful way to wind up our conversation today, not alone on the book, but on the paper, etc., and the whole concept. But the key message, I think, is that the human connection and scientific advancement aren't opposing forces. They're mutually reinforcing when properly integrated. Yeah. And it resonates with my whole idea of the handshake. And I thank both of you for coming along today and for such a lovely conversation, which brings together so many of the conversations I have had to date on the handshake with other powerful thought leaders. And I look forward to future conversations with you and maybe all together at some stage down the line in the future. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sasha. It has been lovely meeting you too.
Thank you so much. It's been great meeting you. And great.
Thank you.
Thank you.